Welcome into another edition of The Point After. Alongside Nate Wimberly, I'm Jorge Andrés. The Chiefs are Super Bowl champions. The season now behind us. Boo to that, yes. The season now behind us. We can reset, get ready for next year. That's what we need to do, Nate. So we got to put a bow on this whole thing. We got to put a bow on the Panthers season and on the NFL season now that the Chiefs have been named champs.
Look, do we really have to do this? Why do we have to relive this again? I'm gonna give you the Cliff Notes version of the Carolina Panthers.
Please.
2-15, fired the coach after 11 weeks, third head coach in 3 years. The owner threw a drink on a fan in Jacksonville. Worst team in franchise history.
Oh.
They never played with the lead in the fourth quarter, folks. The first team since the 1940s to do that. Yes, they are the worst team in Carolina Panthers history. On deck, now at head coach Dave Canales. Let's move this thing forward. No one wants to relive this again. I'm done.
No one wants to relive this whatsoever. Look, it's not great, but there's only up, right? There's only up from here. That's it. I don't know if you can go any worse. I mean, it's going to be pretty bad if you can go.
1-16?
Don't even go with 1-16, 2 wins or no wins.
Oh, it can get worse.
We can, but I'm thinking positive about it. Look, Panther Nation, look, we have some hope. Maybe, at least a little bit, the future for the Panthers. Maybe we have a very special show. You know him as a Swami. Boomer, the man with the best 3-minute NFL highlights week in and week out. I'm talking to my man, ESPN's Chris Berman, now joining the show. Chris, thanks for taking the time to join the show, brother.
Jorge, Nate, how are you? I did hear the Panthers had a rough year. I did hear the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, so far you guys are on point.
Yeah, see, so far we got it right. But listen, Boom, in all seriousness here, we want to put a bow on the season. We have to. We want to move forward and look forward. But if we're going to put a bow on the season, if we're going to move forward, we can't start talking football without at least for a minute. This is not a political show or anything like that. It's a sports show. But we got to address what happened in Kansas City and that parade. When I saw it, my heart shattered. We're trying to celebrate here.
Well, I mean, there's nothing else to say. This is as American, and it's not limited to our country, but let's just say it's as American as you could be. A team won. The city showed up. Whatever the number was, 1,800,000. It doesn't matter if it was 8 people. And it's as pure as it gets. And people bring guns and use them, or one person at least. So without getting political, that's wrong. Second, what's anybody thinking? Third, I've had a knot in my stomach. I think like everybody, you don't have to be on the air. You have to be a human being to go, this is as pure as it gets. The Super Bowl, it was great. It's a 5-quarter game. It could have gone either way, et cetera. You have a repeat champion, et cetera. They're proud in Kansas City. This is the Midwest. And yet that happens. So, I mean, we could get deep on it.
Yeah.
Nobody even knows really why.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter why. I don't know what you do. Well, security, 800,000 people. Let's be real here.
I get it, Boom.
What goes through somebody's mind to do that? I don't know.
Look, you're voicing, I think, what all of us, all sports fans are really feeling, just that knot in everyone's stomach. It's supposed to be a good moment, a celebration, a time to have fun and celebrate a great sport, a great team, and then this kind of stuff happens. So I think we all sports fans, all human beings really, all Americans echo what you're saying. So I did want to touch on that. I'm going to make the hardest, sharpest right turn as I can because we have to, and this is a sports program, but we do have to talk about the dynasty now that has to be the Kansas City Chiefs. They've won back-to-back Super Bowls. We saw Brady go ahead and do this. The Niners had an opportunity to win this game, Chris, and then in overtime, the Niners decided to take the ball and put the ball in Jordan's hands, if you will, to close the game, and the Chiefs end up winning. What was going through your mind when you saw all that?
Well, that's not really reason number one why the Chiefs won and the Niners lost. There's no book on this, Jorge, on, okay, so there's overtime, but we're each going to get the ball. What do you do? In retrospect, Kyle might have changed it. However, if you just want to get to that defense was on the field the last 5 minutes of the game, and they actually held Kansas City to a field goal at the end, not a touchdown, which could have lost the game. I understand there was a few minute timeout before the coin flip, so they're not without. Our defense is tired. Let's let them get on the sideline. So no one has given the Niners credit for that being part of the reason. Is it enough to override and you get the ball second? Maybe not. But why do we always look for a blame? Why do we look at the Niners could have put the Chiefs away in the first half? Yeah. If you're going to beat the champion, you better knock him or her, but him out when you have a chance. Nobody wins a game in the first half, I understand for sure. But at 10-3, the Chiefs were elated. They were badly outplayed except for the one bomb to Hardman. And then, the fumble on the next play anyway. So that's really, if you go back, a lot of it. Needless to say, the block extra point. Now Kansas City only needs a field goal, and the Niners made a good stand. So I'm not looking for a scapegoat. I'm looking at greatness. I hope people realize what they're watching. You know the names. You guys both know the names, Nate, Jorge, of the back-to-back just Super Bowl champs. We could go farther back, but I'm the only one alive. Actually, before the mid-'50s, I wasn't alive either. But, the Packers, the Dolphins, the Steelers twice, the Niners, the Cowboys, the Broncos. The Patriots, I probably left one out doing it off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, Chris, but
here are the Chiefs. We haven't seen one in 19 years. It's pretty cool. The quarterback is as good as it gets. Yeah. The coach is as good as it gets. Sounds like the discussion we had about the Patriots, right? Coach, quarterback, and they're great.
And you mentioned the word scapegoat, and I didn't have this to ask you, but I have to now since you mentioned the word scapegoat. Because Steve Wilkes, the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, is a Charlotte guy. He had an opportunity here in Carolina as well when he stepped in as an interim head coach. Then he goes and coaches a defense into a top 5 in the NFL, has the Kansas City Chiefs on the ropes and doing well, positioning them to win. San Francisco loses, and Kyle Shanahan goes and moves in a different direction and relieves him of his duties. What was your reaction when, at least mine, was that my mind was blown? What was yours?
I'm not trying to defend any of it because Steve, better than me, did a nice job with Carolina in very trying situation, obviously, when he was interim. So something had to give after that. Was it Steve? We don't know. They basically, from my understanding, Jorge, was kind of run the same defense that we've been running with Saleh and Robert Saleh, Jets coach, and D'Amico Ryans, Houston's coach, right? So run the same thing. Not to say that he would come in and, let me scrap it. But, boy, you're right. It wasn't the number 1 defense or number 2. It was 5 or 6 or whatever the numbers are. I mean, the Chiefs didn't score a lot this year for them, but they did have 19 points after 4 quarters. So it smells a little. We just don't know what's inside the building. But, he's an upstanding, kind of got a rough shot both with Arizona and interim coaches rarely held, except the Raiders did. He did okay in Carolina. He will land on his feet. I know this hurts him. He's a very good football man, to your point.
I agree. I think he will definitely land on his feet. And look, if we're talking about the building and the culture of a building, especially a football organization, we have to talk about the culture in the building for the Carolina Panthers. We saw what Bryce Young did this year. We know what kind of player Bryce Young is. Before I get into Dave Canales, I want to hit you on Bryce Young because this is an electric player that we really did not see flourish like we all wanted to. And you could talk about scheme, you could talk about culture, but what do you see in Bryce Young moving forward, at least now with a new regime in?
Well, to think that Bryce all of a sudden forgot how to win because of last year's 2-win season would be foolish. I think you guys agree. I had a chance to meet him and his parents a couple of times while he was still at school at Alabama. Lovely. Parents, lovely. Bryce Young, really good young man. You know he wants to win. You know the smile on his face when you guys won the first game, maybe both, but it was like it could light up a room. I still remember it. And to rule him out, man, boy, he's too short. He'll never. They're foolish. Troy Aikman won one game his first year. It turned out okay.
Yeah.
More recently, Trevor Lawrence. I understand they didn't quite advance this year from the year before, but one win, disaster. You get Doug Peterson in there, and that staff, and everything changes, right? So who's to say that Dave Canales, who I met a couple of times with the Seahawks, I can't say that I know him well. I'm only annoyed at him for one thing. You look at his picture. Is he, 42? He's going to get parted till he's 60. You know, I that annoys me. I'm kidding, of course. I'm jealous as hell.
Yeah.
He's a young guy and he worked for Pete Carroll all those years, so that can be nothing but the type of not manufactured but real enthusiasm and upbeat approach that Bryce Young and obviously a young team, except for a couple of your defenders who were really good, that can only play well. Do the Panthers go to the Super Bowl next year? No, I hate to blow.
Yeah, no, you're not surprising anyone.
People in the balloon, but no. But is the division great? No. You're not playing with the Chiefs. You're not in the AFC. Let's start with that. AFC's much better. You're in a division where you can move like Jacksonville did.
Right.
I don't think anyone's great in that division. And Canales, although only 1 year in Tampa, knows the division. So that's going to help too. Look, nowhere to go it up, but you build it a brick at a time. That sounds like a cliche, but it's true. I really like the quarterback to think that we made a mistake way too early for that.
Right. Right. And then look, the culture's changing. You mentioned it. With Dan Morgan now at the helm, with Brent Tillis.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
He's a culture guy.
I meant to bring him up. I've known him a long time. He's a really good player for Carolina. Yeah. And I knew him, saw him in both Buffalo and Seattle. I like what's in place football-wise. We should try to keep the drinks in the cup. That's another story. But I like what's in. I mean, that's just a basic thing. It's a party foul. But I like what the Panthers are putting in place football-wise. I do.
I love that, Boom. Hey, listen, I got to ask you one last question before I let you go, because I will regret if I didn't ask you this. At least we're trending up. The Panthers are trending up. And I'm going to blow my voice box by doing this. But are we at least going to get one of your whoops? One of those at least?
What, the Panthers getting a
yeah,
whoop?
The
You want me to give you
Panthers.
one? Well, it would depend on movement out of the backfield. What? Bryce Young can do that. I mean, look.
One that's going to come from your soul.
I lost you.
One that's going to come from your soul. How did that even start? The whole thing, the whoop?
Well, to be honest, Barry Sanders, okay? Oh. So when Barry Sanders, who I still believe had bionic ankles that could go 180 degrees, which no other runner could do more than 90. And he did a few of those classic moves, and Tommy Jackson and I for Primetime Forever is like, I just used what it was looking like. What? Now, if you really want to know where I got that from, it's the Three Stooges. It's Curly.
That's right. That's right, Curly. Hey, listen, I hope we're hearing you say that a lot with Bryce Young either throwing or running into the end zone, Chris. I really do. It's only up from here, like you mentioned. And again, we appreciate the time. We're all hopeful that next year is going to be a better year for the Panthers. You're welcome anytime, Boom. You know you are.
I know where you live. That's your problem. All right, Jorge. Hey, it's not too late to say Happy New Year to everybody.
There
Okay?
you go. Hot take. Not too late to say Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Chris.
Thank you. All right. See you, Nate. And good luck with the show. I know you're just on the first hole.
Yeah.
You know, just keep it in the fairway, fellas.
Absolutely. Short grass always. Thank you, Boom.
All right, guys.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we can get a couple of those whoops for next year, that'll at least make the season a little better, Nate.
They don't have a player that goes. They don't have that quarterback or that running back that can move like Barry Sanders. They had one. They had one, but he's in San Francisco right now.
Don't get me started on that now.
But let's move this thing a little bit forward and talk about some of their draft selections. They've got these draft selections coming up here. We're gonna put them up real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks.
Oh.
Of course, this is last year. I'm sorry, this is last year's draft.
Ooh. Why are you doing that? I thought we were moving forward.
Let's move forward. I will say this: among those guys that were on that list, you would hope that, of course, Bryce, but Mingo really needs to take a step forward. They're going to be looking for a number one receiver, but they need dynamic playmakers. And Jonathan Mingo was brought in to be potentially one of those. Rookie season, both him and Bryce just had years to forget. And maybe going through last year will help them this year going forward, getting a fresh new start, fresh set of eyes, a fresh idea of an offense. So Mingo really has to take that next step for this team to really take off. Now, let's move a little bit further to this draft. Of course, they don't have a number one pick because they traded away to get Bryce Young. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 draft picks, 3 in the three in the top 100. It's 101, but it's still a top pick. That second round pick is 33rd. It's like a late first round draft pick. You might as well call it that.
Sure, I was going to say 33rd pick is the first round draft pick.
Exactly. So, they could do something with this if the scouting department does their job. And this is all Dan Morgan. It's more now on Dan Morgan before it is on Dave Canales because they got to get some talent in here, and that's going to be Dan's job to go out there and find that talent and get them in here.
And it's not just in the draft. It's going to be interesting too. I think there's a lot of key offensive linemen in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you could go receiver in the draft, tight end in the draft, and offensive lineman the other way around, or flip flop, and doesn't really matter. But to your point, there's a lot of holes to address.
Yeah, and let's get to some of the draft needs. Of course, everybody says, hey, they need a number one wide receiver. It has to start with offensive line because if Bryce doesn't stand up or you can't keep Bryce up, it doesn't really matter who the number one receiver is because Bryce can't throw the ball on his back. So offensive line, it has to start there. Number one wide receiver. They need a rush end, defensive end, outside linebacker. Brian Burns. We don't know if they're going to.
We don't even know what's happening.
Marquise Haynes is a free agent. Yetur Gross-Matos is a free agent. So rush end has to be addressed in this draft or in free agency. Probably more so the draft because rush ends cost money.
Correct.
A lot of money. And offensive lineman costs a good offensive lineman. Cost you a lot of money. You're not going to get all that in free agency, so you're going to have to find those gems in the draft, and the good teams find those players in the draft.
And especially develop them. Especially because if you find somebody in a third round, in a fourth round, fifth round even, be able to develop them for a 2-3 year kind of trajectory, and now we're talking. We're saving some cash. And we're getting some protection around. You also mentioned tight end.
Yes.
And I look, I'm not going to be biased because I play the tight end position, but I am telling you that tight end is a quarterback's best friend, especially a young quarterback. Because if he's running for his life, Nate, he's got to throw that ball somewhere. And a tight end is going to be right there to help you. I don't know if that's a fifth, sixth round draft pick maybe that turns out to be some sort of good security blanket. I would love that in Carolina.
Let me throw a little caveat here. Miles Sanders was brought in here for his pass catching ability. They never tapped into that last year.
Yeah.
Maybe this new regime can tap into that because before he was a great running back in Philadelphia, he was a great running back out the backfield, catching the ball and making things happen out in space.
Correct.
Just like I said, this last regime didn't tap into that. I don't know why they signed him because they never went after that part of it.
Correct.
They have to do that, and maybe that's another form of that security blanket for Bryce is to get the ball to the back out the backfield. So There are more than one way to skin this cat.
Sure.
Yeah, tight end, they definitely need to find one of those, but they need to find a way to tap into Miles Sanders and that, because you're paying them a lot of money.
Right.
You better get something out of more than you got last.
And that's what we're hoping with Dave Canales, because he's that offensive brain. He's that offensive mind. They just hired Coach Quinn to be the run game coordinator. So that's what's going to be important. Coach Canales being able to open up that scheme, because the scheme before with Frank Wright, the scheme before with Matt Rule was old school football. That's the honest truth. And my soul hurts when I say that because of the kind of football I played, but that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be a tight end today. I'd be a scout team guard. It'd be awful. But that's what the game is today. It's speed. And hopefully they use Miles Sanders.
And linebacker as well. Shaq Thompson is getting older in the tooth. He's coming off an injury. But Frankie Louvu, Camus Grugier Hill, and Deion Jones are all free agents. And also cornerback, because that position just seems that it can't stay healthy. You know, Dante Jackson is going to take he got a big cap hit this year, or cap number that is. They're probably going to have to rework his contract, or he might be a cap casualty, a cut to save some money. You know, J.C. Horn stays hurt. We know what he could potentially be.
Sure.
But he can't reach that if he's not on the field. The best ability is availability. He just can't stay healthy. C.J. Henderson is a free agent. Troy Hill's a free agent. So that position needs some depth, some quality depth. If this team is going to take the next level, take the jump to the next level, cornerback has to improve as well.
And I think really that's a Brant Tillis job, because his job is going to be to put all the puzzle pieces together so that they don't ruin the bank, you know.
Yeah.
And I think Dan is the culture guy, Canales is the offensive mind, and now Tillis. Let's crunch the numbers so we get the right people in here, and there's a shot.
AKA folks, grab a Coke, grab a pill, grab a drink. Sit back, relax. It's going to be a while before you take that next level, that next jump. But I will say something that Boom said, and I keep saying it as well. As long as you're in the NFC South, you always got a shot. It's not a division that's tough. It's not hard to win because everybody's kind of just middling. It's just a mid division, and anybody can take it any year. So, you know, I say take a break or take a step back and just, you know, if they get it all right next year, you never know.
And things change quick. Things change quick.
It's like the AFC South. No one saw the Houston Texans coming. Everybody just automatically said the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to do it again. And lo and behold, Indianapolis had a shot in that division. And Houston actually took the division.
That's great.
In the South, both Souths, you just know you're really not that far off. So that's the silver lining. But don't get your hopes up because there's a lot that the offensive line needs a lot of work. This offense needs a lot of work, but you're never too far.
We got to be optimistic.
Yes.
At least be optimistic for next year.
Absolutely. Time to take a break here on the show. When we come back, we talk some NASCAR as the Cup Series starts their season with the Daytona 500 on Sunday. But first, let's get a look at your forecast.
It's going to be a wet one for the Daytona 500. The rain, well, it's holding off for now, but all weekend long, that rain's going to be spreading farther and farther towards the east. It's dry for right now, but we look off to the west, there's going to be a whole lot of wet weather pushing through the Gulf of Mexico, and it won't be coming to an end until we get to Sunday night going into early Monday morning. So there will be heavy rain off and on throughout the day in Daytona, but here in Charlotte, we've got a gorgeous weekend, mostly sunny skies Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures cooler in the lower 50s.
It's a beautiful day out, Dad. Let's go.
There's another sunny day in the forecast.
Dad, do you want to go for a walk?
High temperature right around. Saturday is a first alert weather day. Several rounds of showers and thunderstorms coming up from the south.
We always knew that people would die.
The violence was in the air, even though they said they were going to arrest people. You could smell it, you could feel it.
She said, I can't stand by and see this thing going on and not do something.
This is a national issue. It's not a Selma issue.
They were sacrificing their time. They were sacrificing, suspending their lives, and they paid with it.
The late Steve Crump's final documentary, Sacrifice Across the Color Line, Thursday at 7 p.m.
Hey, welcome back to The Point After. Nate and Jorge here with you. Look, from one Super Bowl literally to another Super Bowl, but this one, the Super Bowl of NASCAR. Yes, the Daytona 500 gets the season started before the Sprint Cup Series moves to Atlanta Motor Speedway, Nate.
Hey, and joining us now live from Daytona is NASCAR beat writer for the Charlotte Observer, Shane Canuck. Shane, hey, thanks for joining us here on The Point After, Shane. Let's start with this. What are some of the big storylines heading into 2024 for the NASCAR Cup Series?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Nate. Guys, you know, the NASCAR Cup Series field does look very similar to last year, but the big difference is with Stewart-Haas Racing. Kevin Harvick, the driver who originally replaced Dale Earnhardt in 2001, is now calling races on Fox after retiring. So Cup rookie Josh Berry is now driving that iconic number 4 car, famously associated with Harvick. The only other driver who's stepping away from full-time Cup racing is Eric Almirola. After 6 years at SHR, the 39-year-old is working a part-time role with Joe Gibbs Racing's Xfinity Series team. Noah Gragson, 25-year-old, signing a multi-year deal to drive that number 10 Ford Mustang. So, joining Ryan Preece and Chase Briscoe, Berry and Gragson giving Tony Stewart and Gene Haas's NASCAR team a new look in 2024.
Let's talk a little about Chase Elliott. He had just a strange season after winning the championship. Got the injury, missed a lot of the season. Came back, then got suspended after doing something really dangerous on the track, and he missed the playoffs. Talk about Chase. He is the most popular driver in NASCAR this year, or in the past few years. But you know, what kind of season can we expect from him as Hendrick Motorsports enters this historic season of number 40?
Yeah, for the 6th year in a row, Chase Elliott is NASCAR's most popular driver. And like you just said, that's after not winning a single race. The second-generation driver, his father, Bill, a legend, won a number of these awards, missed significant time last year because of a leg injury that stemmed from a snowboarding accident, and then was briefly suspended, like you said, for his role in a wreck at Charlotte's Coca-Cola 600. So, yeah, Chase Elliott, still one of the popular drivers, obviously a 2020 NASCAR Cup Series champion, and he's on the Hendrick Motorsports team celebrating its 40th anniversary. Could, you know, and obviously has that name, has the popularity, and despite a season in which he couldn't win a single race, still NASCAR's most popular driver over a host of drivers, including the champion, Ryan Blaney.
Last question, and you bring me to the one that I'm finished with. Can Ryan Blaney repeat? Now, last night wasn't so good in the duel as he wrecked out and caught fire, but he's okay. And you'll have to go to the backup car and go to the back of the pack. But can Blaney repeat as champ?
I think he could. I mean, he really has brought a lot for the sport in terms of being somebody who they really feel could help grow it. And he, last year, all season long, it didn't necessarily feel like he was anything of a champion. He won that race, the Coca-Cola 600, and that snapped a really long winless streak. And then from there, that he was into the playoffs with 1 win. And then during the playoffs, he ended up winning Talladega after a race that he really didn't win till the very end. And then he just got hot at the right time. And even though he won at Martinsville, won other races, but he was just finishing second, just had continued top finishes throughout the playoffs. And then ultimately that elusive, that second place finish at Phoenix, not the winner at that race, but second place finish, locked him up with the championship as Ross Chastain was not in the championship for and won it. So Ryan Blaney could, very well repeat as NASCAR's champion.
Hey, Shane, man, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on The Point After. We'll be talking to you throughout the NASCAR Cup Series season. Happy Daytona, man. It's racing season again.
Exactly. NASCAR is back. Thank you guys so much for having me, and excited to talk with you more.
All right. Take it easy. Jorge.
Time now for our locks, the ones that won't let you down. That's right, it's our best bets. And for that, we are pleased to be joined by sports betting expert, a contributor to the Power Rank, Edward Egros. Ed, thanks for the time. And look, a full slate of college basketball heading our way on Saturday, especially in the ACC. The Tar Heels, they're playing with our emotions lately. They take on the Hokies Saturday at 2. What do you see there?
I can see North Carolina winning this thing by double digits, maybe around 10.5, 11, something like that. That's probably the number that you want to be looking for once the numbers get released. And I know there does seem to be a bit of a difference between what the metrics say about North Carolina and what pollsters and perhaps a national reputation are saying. Effective field goal rate for UNC, it's just 51%. That's around the national average. Compare that with, say, like Duke at 55%. Certainly offensively, there is something that you want to see a little bit more of around this time in mid-February. RJ Davis, Armando Bacot, they've been great, but they need the bigs to produce a good bit more offensively for me to feel comfortable that they are a true national title contender. And certainly over the last few games, North Carolina, they have stumbled a little bit. Some of the losses haven't looked too great. Yet at the same time, I do think this can be a good bounce back spot going up against Virginia Tech. They're kind of the opposite of the Tar Heels. Effective field goal rates in the top 50, but defensively, they have a lot of issues. And so I expect Davis and Bacot to have monster performances, and maybe somebody else can step up as well to where I feel like North Carolina can win by double digits.
Look, Ed, you mentioned Duke, so I got to hit you on Duke. They've won 3 straight games since their loss to UNC. They take on the Seminoles on Saturday at 2. In this instance, who you got?
It is interesting, right? Because you're dealing with a really, really good basketball team going on the road in the ACC. And I know a lot of folks may immediately go with Florida State just because of that. But I do feel like Duke can win this by a couple of possessions. You know, maybe look for a 4.5 or a 5 out there. And yes, dangerous game, no doubt about it. But the question that I have here is, who will control the pace of this basketball game? Seminoles want to run up and down the floor. Duke wants a more moderate pace. Whoever gets to dictate the pace could win this thing outright. And I think this is going to be a bad matchup for Florida State just because Duke is so careful with the basketball. They're not going to turn it over all that much. And usually it's Florida State getting those steals. That's how they're able to push the pace and have a much better transition game than just about everybody else. Interesting element, too, in all of this, Evan Maya uses some advanced modeling techniques to power rank the top players in the country. Kyle Filipowski is number 9 overall per his metrics. The 7-footer has a high usage rate, 57% true shooting rate, 56% shooting rate from 2-point land. He is going to be a phenomenal factor in this game. So I feel like Duke can win this, maybe a little close, but I think around 4.5 is the number you want to look for.
I'm with you. I think it's going to be a little too close for comfort for Duke fans, but I do think they will get the W. Finally, look, the Wolfpack, they visit Clemson at 7:45 on Saturday. Clemson has been hot since that UNC win. Should people keep playing that hot hand?
I do think Clemson is for real. Now, they're not world beaters by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying they're going to go on this random tear and win, say, the ACC tournament or anything like that. But I do think they can win this game by around 9 points. And I think one of the reasons is because, now they're not world beaters, but they are well-rounded to where effective field goal rates offensively and defensively, they're in the top 90 in the country. Only a handful of teams can really boast such consistency. They don't force too many steals defensively, but they do limit additional possessions on that end of the floor. And so I feel like North Carolina State, they're not going to have those second chance opportunities that perhaps they would need to have to knock off a good team like Clemson. So to me, the Tigers should prevail and perhaps do it comfortably.
All right, well, I got one for you, Eddie. If you're talking hot hands, we got to talk about the Gamecocks. Now, hold on a minute. I know they just got stomped by Auburn, but SC faithful, don't you sweat it. That SEC top defense, I think, is going to be back in top form as they host LSU on Saturday at 3:30. Now, before that Auburn game, the Gamecocks were just allowing 64 points per game. And look, they're 13-1 at home and outscoring their opponents usually by around 6 points. So if the line comes out that South Carolina at -5.5, maybe even less, maybe 4 because of that loss to Auburn, I'm jumping all over that, not to mention the money line easy bet for the Gamecocks.
Offensively, South Carolina's looked fantastic over these last several games. And look, Auburn and LSU, this is night and day. Like, Auburn could very well contend for the national championship. LSU is nowhere near that kind of level. So to me, I completely agree with you. Great bounce back spot for the Gamecocks.
Once more, sports betting expert Edward Egros, contributor to the Power Rank. Eddie, always love having you on. Thanks for the time, brother.
Thank you so much.
And Nate, I loved chatting with Ed, especially on the UNC thing, because I tell you what, man, that roller coaster has been wild these last few games. You're looking at a team that took it to Duke and then goes and plays Georgia Tech. And I mean, it's just up and down, playing with my emotions like that. But I think he's right. I think Carolina is in a good spot here to win and win big this coming weekend.
I'm not so sure about that.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Carolina hadn't been the same since they beat Duke, and Armando Baycott sat in the locker room and said, the ACC championship comes through me. Since then, people have been going through you. So maybe, sometimes you just win with some humility and not be so brash and boastful. But, they're just not. Something ain't right in that Carolina locker room right now. They're talking about being late for shoot-arounds and not having the right mindset. Something ain't jiving. Now, a very talented team.
Yeah,
it's a Final Four team if they get it all right here, and I don't think they're all right there right now. They need a big win to kind of just change the psyche and get back to what they were doing when they started out 9-0 in the ACC.
Right.
They were steamrolling folks, so they're not that far off. But until they show me on the court that they're ready to get back to it and really dominate teams and win like they were winning when they were 9-0 in the ACC, I just think that it's something ain't right. Something ain't right.
And I don't think Virginia, to your point, I don't think Virginia Tech is that big win, but it's still a win. It's still Virginia Tech.
Yes.
It's still Virginia Tech.
And speaking of Virginia, watch out for the Hoos. They did have a disappointing loss on Tuesday, but everybody just kind of counted Virginia out. They're playing some good basketball. They're third in the ACC right now. I think they're a game out of first place behind North Carolina. Duke's a half a game out of first. So, North Carolina had a stranglehold on the league until they lost to Georgia Tech, then they beat Carolina, then they had those couple of losses.
They're letting it go.
They're letting everybody back in.
Yep.
So it's wide open. And for a while I thought, hey, maybe that last North Carolina Duke game in March, it ain't even gonna mean nothing because Carolina's gonna be they're gonna stink. They're gonna boat race everybody in the ACC.
Now it's a dogfight.
It's looking like a dogfight.
Yeah, now it's looking like a dogfight.
This is what you want to see. One more thing I want to talk about this Saturday. Big weekend for the Charlotte 49ers.
Yes.
Sunday they take on Wichita State at noon. That's on ESPN2, national TV. Also that day, FAU takes on first place South Florida. That's a prime time. That's not a prime time, but it's on the mothership. So hey, if Charlotte wins on Sunday and FAU beats South Florida, once again Charlotte's back in first place.
There we go.
And they play South Florida towards the end in a couple more weeks, so they will have a chance to really hold on to. They'll have their own destiny in hand if FAU, which FAU's 24 in the nation.
I was going to say
FAU is also playing. They're also playing for first place as well because they're tied for second with Charlotte with South Florida. So it could be a three-way tie after Sunday. Both of those games are at noon by 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
There could be a three-way tie for first place with Charlotte holding their own destiny in their hand because they still have to play South Florida again. And they already have the game up on Florida Atlantic because they beat Florida Atlantic.
UNC needs that Charlotte mentality because Charlotte right now is cooking with some gas.
Yes. That's it. You got anything else?
That's it, man.
Hey,
that's it, man.
For this edition of The Point After.
But we'll be back.
We'll be back on Monday at 1 o'clock. See you then for another edition of The Point After.